Today I have the pleasure of sitting down with JD Hettema, lead pastor and church planner of Echo Church in Chino. Echo was planted as a result of our To the End of the Earth campaign efforts and has grown steadily since the fall of 2019. JD is a great preacher and thinker, and I can't wait for you to hear what God is doing through his new church plant. Always good to hear from old friends. Let's do it. Welcome to Footnotes, a behind-the-scenes look at what we value and why it matters here at Foothill Church in Glendora, California. My name is Stephen Coppenrath. I'm one of the pastors on staff, and I am your host. Well, welcome. Glad to have you here, man.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Dude, whenever I see you, I can't shake our introduction story from our head, by the way, my head.
Wait, which introduction story?
So
the one that you remember or the one that you don't remember?
The one that I don't remember.
Okay.
So the one that you remember that I do not remember. So just real quick, you and I were youth pastors at the time.
Yeah. You
want to take it from here, actually?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wanted to hang out with, one of the fellow youth pastors in my city.
Yeah.
I was trying to reach out and get to know other
The
churches
Olive
in
Branch.
the area.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah. So I called up Foothill Church. It was kind of a church that I didn't really know much about, but they were kind of up and coming. And so I wanted to reach out to that youth pastor. And so I get together with this guy, Stephen Coppenrath, and we go down to a taco place. I think it was Nazo Taco in Azusa.
Right.
And we hang out. We have a wonderful time.
It was a delight.
Yeah, we're talking about youth ministry, we're talking about kids,
Yeah.
we're comparing notes. And, years later, I come to Foothill Church and I'm interviewing with Stephen. I say, hey, you remember that time, Stephen, when we went and hung out and got tacos?
And I say,
crickets.
nope, I don't remember that at all.
Nothing.
I literally forgot that whole experience.
And I'm still offended to this day. So
I'm glad it stuck with you.
I hold that deeply against you.
I think that it's a great way to remember our relationship. It commemorates it in lots of ways. So, well, speaking of remembering JD Hettema, there's perhaps a group of people at Foothill who for them, the last distinct memory they have of you is our sending service in the fall of 2019.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was. And it seems like a million years ago in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to kind of fill out some of the gaps a bit and get a bit of an update. So some people don't know you. Let's just get some of the basics. Tell us about your family a little bit, wife and kids and all that.
I'm married to Lauren. We've been married for 11 years. We have Audrey, who's 5, Owen, who's 3, Pierce, who's 1, and then we have a little girl on the way.
Wow.
So our kids will be spaced almost 2 years apart.
Wow.
So, yeah,
That's
we're
awesome.
heading towards 4.
That's great. Yeah, 4 kids. As you know, I have 4 as well. They're a handful, but it's also, I feel like 4 actually, it gets easier in some ways. So hopefully that's the case for you. Yeah.
3 has been enough as
Yeah.
far as our energy level. And so
For
the
sure.
Lord's going to have to sustain us for 4.
So who's your favorite kid?
I can't say that.
Okay.
I just can't.
You can't do it? Okay. You can just tell me off the air. That's fine. Well, man, hey, one of the things that I've always appreciated about your story is just the diversity in your life experiences, your leadership experiences. You've really done a lot of different things. And just to sum it up a bit for those listening, JD was a youth pastor locally here in Glendora. That's back to the years where I do not remember that lunch. But followed by a few years serving as a police officer in Santa Barbara, and then off to seminary in Minneapolis, and then he joined us on staff at Foothill Church for about 3 years. Does that sound about right?
I think it was more like 2 and a little bit.
2 and a little bit, okay.
Yeah.
And now he's the lead pastor. He's the planning pastor at Echo Church, and as of the fall, right? And so you think that you were like 50 years old with all those stories, with all those careers. It's pretty amazing. He's not, by the way. But here's kind of just a question to kick us off. What's unique in this season for you? Like, what is God doing in your life? How's God growing you and your leadership in this stage of your career and your life?
Well, I think we're in a unique phase, obviously, in our world,
Yeah.
and we'll maybe talk about that as we go on. But we obviously have things going on in our world around us that are making things unique as far as from church planting
For sure.
perspective.
Yeah.
There's things in our family that are unique. Lauren being pregnant with our 4th has been definitely a unique season. My wife's pregnancies are just very difficult. There's just her body goes through extra nausea, I think, than most women get, and then just extra pains and difficulties there. And then there was the shock of the 4th kid. That alone was like, where are we going to have?
Right.
Where are the reserves of our energy to be able to actually do this well or reasonably well?
Right.
And then there's the fact that my wife and I joke that a church plant is like having twins. So we feel like we've got the church plant, and we're still on our first year of that. We've got the fourth kid. Lauren's pregnancy stuff has been a challenge, and then honestly, our nation and our world, and all of those things have kind of left me with a sense of inadequacy, to be honest with you, and then also just a sense of, Lord, come quickly. Because as we're talking right now, Stephen, and I'm looking out the window, there is like this ash cloud over our heads, and it is snowing ash on us as we speak. I mean, so if that doesn't sort of evoke these thoughts of, Lord, what is going on in our world? I don't know what does. And so I think it's causing me to really kind of be pulled loose from some of the ways in which I've settled here, and this is my home here, and reminded me that this isn't where we're supposed to settle, and we have a job to do here. Lord, sustain us while we're here. But I look at Scripture and I see where the saints are crying, Maranatha, Lord, come quickly. I'm like, okay, I think I get it. I think I'm starting to get that.
Yeah, that's well said. And I think that sense of being not kind of settled can be so disorienting, and it's so amazing that as Christians we have the hope to take us to another place, as far as realizing that, because so much of the world is left with that ash cloud of just like, what now, or how do I kind of move on from here? And that's so good to hear, just even personally from you, and how the Lord is working in your life.
And one thing I'll say is that I think more and more people are looking at the world around them, and it's causing them to really think. And I'm having conversations now with people that I've made almost no inroads with the gospel to. They just don't even want to have the conversation. And now all of a sudden they're asking me. So we're seeing that happen. We're seeing people in the world go, what is going on? And all of a sudden they're fearful. They're afraid of what's going on. And then they're asking, how can what hope do I have? And they're asking Christians around them.
That's amazing. Well, church planning, kind of as you mentioned, that other twin a little bit, is crazy in all kinds of ways. And I really think about what you have been up to the last year, and it's kind of a battle, right? I mean, it's in the realm of spiritual warfare. It's definitely kind of this aggressive move for the offense, right? And one of the things that I want people at Foothill Church to hear, and maybe people at Echo Church, if they listen to this as well, to understand as Christians, is that we are all called to be a part of that kind of battle. And we're all called to make disciples. So the Great Commission, Matthew 28, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And this is not just an apostolic directive, right? It's not just for pastors for Peter or for the guys who are kind of, however you want to think about that. It's for all Christians, that we're all sent to have those conversations you're talking about. It's like, hey, what is going on in this world? And how do I give them a reason for the hope that I have?
That's right.
And so for you and I, that being sent has kind of resulted in us being in vocational full-time ministry. But what would you say to someone in your church who is trying to determine what it means for them in their life to kind of live out the Great Commission, to live out what it means to be sent? Do they have to be a pastor? Do they have to plant a church? What does that look like for them?
Yeah, well, when I think Matthew 28, which is what you're listing, you're talking about the Great Commission in Matthew 28. I don't think we want to. I think what I want to do in my mind is then go from Matthew 28 to Ephesians 4, where, okay, as I see my role, one of the roles I had, so I'm called a pastor. Our church voted me in as a pastor, and there in Ephesians 4 is Jesus gifting the church with pastors, and then what's really important to me is what then follows is that for the equipping of the saints for the work of the ministry. Right. So yes, there were a bunch of I don't know. I imagine there were maybe 12 guys or 11 guys maybe there that Jesus was talking to in Matthew 28 who eventually became sort of the leaders of the church at that point. So in some sense, Matthew 28, he's talking to leaders, but he's saying go and make disciples, which assumes this chain of discipleship that's working its way perhaps from those leaders initially, but then through to other leaders who then disciple others who disciple others. And right. I mean, I think we see that in, is it 1 Timothy 2:2, and teach these things to faithful men who will then in turn teach them to others. So we see this chain of discipleships happening. So I think for me, what I would want, Christians to know that are not in vocational ministry is that, first of all, it's the job of pastors to disciple their churches. I definitely think that's the case. And of course that comes through preaching sermons, but it's so much more, right? It's life on life. It's getting together with people. It's helping them, walking them through the word together. And then it's saying, go and do this with somebody else.
Speaking of your church, and just thinking about Echo in this season, one of the things that can and should weigh heavily on pastors is the responsibility of leading people through hard things. And obviously we as Christians are just trying to work out our own stuff spiritually, just grow and be more sanctified and all those things. But we're also, as pastors, called to lead people through that process. You mentioned Ephesians 4, equipping the saints for the work of ministry. So as a new church, a year old or so, you guys coming up on a year or
in
so,
October.
Right? Yeah, that's very soon. What's been the most challenging thing about this season of COVID-19, global pandemic, for your congregation? Most challenging thing, and then maybe what's been the biggest blessing as well?
Obviously, a church plant. What you're trying to do is you're trying to build momentum.
Yeah. Yep.
You're trying to build a culture. You need to actually be together to do those things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to build momentum online. And so we've experienced the same thing. I think many other churches have, which is that we had to either put those things on pause or, we just felt like those things weren't happening the way we would have hoped going into this, this first year. Yeah. So that's a challenge.
And it's true. Like a lot of churches have experienced the same thing, but specifically, I think as a church plant, you see that through a different lens. That's felt in a lot more kind of strong ways. And so that's been challenging for sure. What's something that maybe you've kind of found some joy in, or just even a blessing in the midst of that?
Yeah, that's the thing that it was most surprising to me, and maybe would be most worth sharing. So if you think about it, you're a church plant. You've got people that are tentatively with you, and you're not quite sure who's my core team, who are my most committed people, and who are the people that are sort of here because this is a cool new hip thing.
Right.
And then COVID hits.
Right.
And you're quarantined, and you may have high numbers of people watching, but what does that mean?
Right.
What does a number on YouTube of somebody who's logging in actually mean when it comes to your job to care for them?
Absolutely. And
the blessing for us has been, at the very beginning of church planting, we pushed membership hard. Okay. And we worked out our documentation, and we got things in line so that basically to join Echo Church is to make a deep commitment. Right. And we called people to that. And it's actually, at times, it's even cost us. So calling people to that has cost us because other people got, I don't know, I'm not quite on board with all of this. And they ended up going to different churches. And at the time that was painful, but the payoff for it has been now emerging, at least I think we're emerging, on the other side of this quarantine. Right. Having grown 12 members throughout, we went from 40 to 52 throughout this this quarantine. So we're currently sitting at 52 members, and we were able to grow through the quarantine. And I just asked myself, well, why is that? And it's a complete grace of God that happened. But here's what's been nice for me. I know who our people are. And I know who has made a commitment, and they know who their church is. So there's not been this thing where a bunch of people have gone, well, I'm just going to go and head over to another church somewhere else. There's been a sense of ownership from our people. There's been a sense of me knowing, okay, these are the people we're responsible to care for through this time. And then, we get to talk about giving too. Giving continued to maintain throughout that period. Right. And I've consistently gone back to our members, just gone, you guys are such a huge blessing, because we did not see that dip in giving. We did not see that dip in people that were with us throughout this whole thing. And I think part of it has to do with just calling people to a high commitment to the church at the very beginning. So we deepened the core team as much as we possibly could, and that's what we're seeing now emerging out the other side.
That's amazing, man. I mean, that's healthy for so many reasons. I mean, you listed a bunch of them to start with, but just knowing who your people are, the security of relationships, even just laterally with people. I'm just like, who are my friends? Who's a part of my tribe in the season? But that's so good to hear that decision early on has really just produced fruit in so many ways.
It has.
Just thinking about even folks who are maybe considering planting down the road. And I know that, like you said, the world is unknown in many ways. It's kind of, you're not sure what plans are moving forward. But for folks who are maybe feeling called to vocational ministry, how would you encourage maybe a church planner who maybe sees themselves as doing what you've done in the last year, maybe them doing that in the next few years? What would you encourage them towards?
I talk to a lot of guys that are wanting to move this direction, and there seems to be a commonality that I see in a lot of them, and that's that they all feel that seminary has got to be that first step. And I actually try to dissuade people from that. I think that, and not to dissuade them from seminary, period, just that not be the first thing that comes up in somebody's head when they think. Because seminary will give you the degree, and you're usually in debt, and you come out of there, and it's like, but really, what I think a lot of people are experiencing when they say gotta go to seminary is they see the preaching aspect. Right. They see that's the most visible aspect of anybody, whether it's a pastor who's been a lead pastor of a church for a long time or a church planter. They see, it's the preaching. That's I got to go get the training for the preaching. Right. And I don't deny that at all. But I think that what has been so clear to me in this past year is that a pastor is more than a preacher. A pastor is, what does the word even mean in the Bible? The pastor is a shepherd. He's shepherding a group of people. Right. And if you love the preaching, that's great. That's a form of shepherding. But if you aren't shepherding, if you're not in love with the shepherding process of the, and what do I mean by that? I mean that the discipleship process of taking, a group of leaders through and helping them to grow so that you're multiplying yourself and you're not the only person doing the work of the ministry. Going back to Ephesians 4, right. If you don't love the counseling aspect of, you're going to have herding sheep coming to your church plant. And it seems that church plants are unique in that. They seem to draw people where maybe other churches have been big or have not necessarily been able to care for them in the same exact way. And so church plants tend to get a certain number of those people. And it isn't okay for a pastor of a church plant to say, well, I just want to be about this preaching thing. And I don't really want to actually shepherd the people that are here.
That's good. Yeah.
And so what I tell somebody who's really interested in this is I say, look, first of all, you've got to be an elder in order to be a pastor. Eldering and pastoring are the same thing. So go pursue that in the church that you're at. And then one of the things you've got to have is you got to have some kind of somebody in your life that's saying, yes, you can do this. People are actually helped when you stand up in the pulpit and you talk to people. And since we see these things now, the shepherding and the preaching, we now think it's a good idea for you to go get that training. Yeah. And so I just want to move that to the second or third step rather than the first step. And I think a lot of people have it as the first step. Got to go get the degree. Yeah. But hold off, because I think you need somebody to kind of sign off on you before you go get into $80,000, $100,000 in debt.
That's really wise, and that's good advice for those considering ministry. And what I so appreciate, even JD, just about our relationship as a church and just personally, is the proximity of having a guy like you who's done it on the kind of the front lines of ministry, and having the ability to reach out and kind of even point people to you as a resource. So Foothill Church, if you want to know more about how to support church planners like JD, go to foothill.church/send. You can pray, you can give using our virtual wall. And if you are looking for a Bible-centered, gospel-preaching church in Chino, please consider checking out Echo Church. They meet on Sundays at 9 a.m. Well, just as we wrap this up, I just want to just ask you a few questions. What's a book that maybe has been impactful or helpful to you lately in your life?
I'm going to answer a little differently than I normally would. I've been, of course, reading theology, and I've read a couple of books lately that have been helpful on that front. But actually, I've been into history lately. Yeah. And just as far as just general leadership, just finished a biography of Harry Truman. Oh, cool. Really amazing president of our nation. Not sure if he was a believer. Not sure exactly to what extent he had faith in Christ. Sure. But as far as just learning general leadership principles and practices, the Truman biography is really, really good. I don't have it offhand, the exact one that it is. Maybe we could put it in the notes.
Yeah, I'll grab it from you.
But really enjoyed just kind of the man that he was, and leading the nation through a time that I think helps for thinking about things now and where we currently are.
Yeah. Well, hey, I appreciate your time, man, and it's just even good to hear what's happening in your church and how the Lord has grown you personally and your family. And so we'll be praying for you and Lauren as you guys get ready to have number 4. But just really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here.
All right, well, we're out of time, but thanks for joining us for our podcast, Footnotes. Be sure to subscribe, and we'd also appreciate you sharing this resource with others, and even leaving us a favorable review if you feel so inclined. So until next time, Foothill, peace be with you.
Crickets.
Nope, I don't remember that at all.
Nothing.